When I first picked up Stardew Valley, I wasn't expecting to think much of randomness. But almost immediately I could feel something subtle yet intentional. Concerned Ape has clearly gone to great lengths to weave unpredictability into the game's world. It's not just simple luck mechanics, but clearly crafted variations. It felt like every corner of the game held the possibility of something new. At first, I assumed these surprises would eventually start to repeat, that randomness by nature couldn't stay this controlled for long, but somehow Stardew Valley kept proving me wrong. It created the illusion of a living world, one that didn't just react to the player, but evolved in its own quiet, surprising way. This is what makes Stardew Valley so fascinating. It uses controlled randomness to build immersion, and that's the idea I want to explore today. How Stardew Valley creates the illusion of randomness that often feels completely out of your hands. Such systems don't always want to be noticed, but once you see them, they reveal just how cleverly this world is held together. What many players don't realize is that Stardew Valley's randomness isn't truly random. One of the core variables is the number of steps the player takes each day. This step count feeds into the game's internal random number generator and subtly influences certain events. This is especially true for the game's luck mechanic, which gives the impression that the randomness can be understood or even influenced. Luck affects a surprising number of things. Even less intuitive events are governed by luck. For example, the number of lightning strikes during a thunderstorm is inversely related to your luck. Higher luck means fewer strikes. Each in-game day, Stardew Valley rolls the luck value between -0.1 and +0.1. You can't see the exact number, but a fortune teller on the TV offers vague messages like, "The spirits are somewhat annoyed today." That ambiguity is deliberate. It makes the player feel like they're picking up on something meaningful. Later on, when you unlock the special charm, your baseline luck gets a small but permanent bump of plus 0.025. This doesn't guarantee better days, but it feels like it does. You can also manipulate luck in more direct ways. Consuming certain foods or drinks like ginger ale boost it temporarily. Items like the lucky ring or the statue of blessing push the illusion further. By giving you just enough tools to respond to an invisible stat, Stardew Valley makes randomness feel personal, even when the outcome was decided before you woke up that day. On the other hand, Stardew Valley also uses many systems that are entirely outside of the average player's influence to create a certain lack of control. Weather in Stardew Valley is determined by internal flags that reset every night. These flags dictate if it will rain, snow, be windy or stay sunny, but players can't see or affect this process. While a few days are fixed to be sunny or stormy, most are chosen based on specific probabilities. Even then, the system introduces unpredictability. For example, summer gradually becomes stormier as the month progresses. But this precise chance changes daily and never guarantees any specific outcome. Rain one day doesn't mean rain the next, and the player can't influence the progression unless they use external items such as the rain totem. Other events are also controlled by what seems like a random game system. Every night, the game rolls for one of several special events, but the odds are slim, and the triggers are hidden. These include meteorites and stone owls, which require exact tile conditions, crop fairies, which grow a 5x5 area of crops but only if the crops are correctly staged and it's not raining, or even witch events, which may leave void eggs or affect slimes, but her building target is random unless blocked. These moments feel entirely random, but only because the player never sees the failed attempts behind them. Some of these events seem interactive but are governed by hidden conditions. For example, your spouse might ask you for a child, but only if you meet a long list of invisible requirements. Even animal births are random. The event chooses an upgraded barn and an eligible animal without the player's input. These variables aren't shown to the player, making the timing feel arbitrary. No matter how much you prepare, stocking up on crops, building barns, planning for storms, Stardew Valley reminds you that the world runs on its own logic. There's something fascinating about the way Stardew Valley treats skill. It's not just about your character improving, but also about how you, as the player, begin to improve. Stardew Valley divides its gameplay using skills and professions. As you continue to use a specific skill, your character earns experience points that eventually allow you to level up. This gives you a variety of benefits, such as gaining proficiency in the tools that you use and thereby end up consuming less energy. While this built-in element can make you feel as if the randomness starts leaning in your favor, there's actually a separate process which you as the player start feeling indirectly. Fishing is a skill which you either enjoy or tend to leave to the end of the game to deal with later. I was always fond of this gameplay element, especially in the early game, and this led me to notice something very interesting. While the fishing bar's size increased as I continued to fish more, I also started to indirectly learn the movement patterns of the fish themselves. This got me thinking, randomness isn't only reduced by increasing the frequency of an event, but also through your individual skill as a player. Each fish within Stardew Valley actually exhibits distinct movement patterns during the fishing minigame. These include standard movements with moderate unpredictability, smooth, gentle, predictable movements, sinker, a rapid downward acceleration, floater, quicker upward movements, and finally dart, erratic, unpredictable movements with increasing amplitude. These patterns are tied to the fish's difficulty level, making some catches more challenging than the others. As you begin to repeatedly fish in a specific area, you don't only start to be able to predict which fish you have on the hook without the sonar bobber, but also improving your ability to control the rod according to the fish's pattern. This game mechanic purposefully makes you feel as if randomness exists within the game, but that it becomes less relevant the more you begin to improve. Enemy movement in Stardew Valley might feel reactive or chaotic, but it's not truly AI-driven in the way players assume. What looks like a spontaneous behavior is actually the result of preset conditions, defined parameters controlling when, where, and how enemies act. The result is an experience that feels unpredictable but follows strict rules underneath. But once you identify the rules, you can start predicting outcomes. This brings up the question, to what extent does a preset movement actually contribute to randomness? Players often feel overwhelmed by the sheer number of enemies, and tend to relate it to being unlucky with how the enemies have chosen to move towards them. But their chasing behavior is entirely scripted around distance and line of sight, not decision making or dynamic control. So in a way, the player's own actions actually control their movements. Another common group, especially in the earlier game, includes enemies that activate when the player enters a set space or steps near a disguised threat. They are able to disguise themselves, burrow underground, or activate when approached. Some even revive if handled incorrectly. Their unpredictability comes from the placement instead of behavior. The feeling of surprise is engineered here by embedding enemies within the environment itself, where activation feels random but it's actually spatially scripted. This shows how while the odds of the enemies appearing in the environment might be considered as random, the event of them engaging in combat with the player is completely under your control. Then there's enemies that are also based on placement, but this time don't aim to engage with the player at all. The game uses them to ease tension or as obstacles rather than threats, making you feel like you've gained control over what once felt chaotic. These enemies follow strict paths and only react when hit. Their behavior never changes, making them feel random, only until you recognize the pathing loop. It gives the impression of an adaptive intelligence when there is none. You believe enemies are thinking when they're actually following invisible scripts. Once you understand that, each encounter starts becoming less about surprise and more about recognizing their pattern. Items on the floor such as forageables might seem like they're controlled by a background system, a system where you pick up items and they eventually reset. At the end of each week, specifically on Sunday, the game resets the available items and aims to distribute a max of 6 forageables for each section of the map. But their spawns aren't just handed out randomly, they actually rely on available unblocked tiles. That means if your map is filled with trees, chests or buildings, you're shrinking the possible spawn points. On the other hand, clearing debris or carefully managing your layouts opens up more valid space, and therefore increases their spawns. Additionally, certain rare items like ancient seeds aren't just less frequent because of their low spawn percentages. They're also tied to location, season, and whether you've met hidden conditions. Even the odds of digging up an artifact spot can vary. They're much more common in winter, or in areas with more open space. The system evolves based on what you've done, quietly adjusting the tables behind the scenes. You're not just reacting to randomness, you're shaping the conditions that generate it. It feels like luck, but it's really just a long chain of responses to your progress and choices. So when we ask how the game fakes randomness to keep us playing, the answer is simple. It doesn't rely on true randomness. It fakes it just enough to maintain the illusion. By obscuring the rules behind familiar systems and scattering just enough variability throughout, the game creates a feeling of chance that rewards both curiosity and consistency. You keep playing not because anything can happen, but because you believe it might, and because each time you feel a little bit more prepared for it.